Morning, everybody. How are you this morning? You hear me okay? Good? All right, great. And I'm here this morning because at Whole Foods we roll as a team, so we've already taken over the room here, right here. So you see, this is all of our team with various wonderful people. And also our team from Allegro, Jeff Teeter and Heather over here. If you guys, Jeff's the president of Allegro Coffee based in Thornton. And Jeff actually and Heather put together a gift bag for you there that's got some of the latest coffee from Allegro, because we roast it right here in Thornton, and it's kind of a cool facility. Any of you been to the facility, seen the roasting? And it's awesome. So I hope you'll have a chance to pick one of those up on the way out. So here we are, and I was going to say I got in the gym this Tuesday in Austin, Texas, and I start my workout and I look up and there's a picture of Westminster, Colorado, hail coming down like golf balls. I'm saying, Rich, what are you inviting me to here, right? The hail with golf balls. But anyways, we were talking, Rich and I had a great talks with both Rich and Frank Gray in thinking about what might be helpful for you as you do your meeting here. And Rich confessed to me, he said, I've told my community that there won't be, we need a grocery store in Pueblo. He said, but it won't be Whole Foods. I don't think it should be Whole Foods. But he said after we finished our talk, he said, well, maybe it would be Whole Foods. So Rich, we went to work, get this thing working here. There we go. To get this PowerPoint set out. This is going to be the longest joke known to man right here. So there we go. Let's see here. We okay over there? Anyways, Rich was teasing me about Whole Foods and coming to Pueblo, and then we shouldn't come and we should come. So we tried to do something about it, and you'll have to wait to see what we decide to do about it. Maybe. What do you think back there? You think a few minutes or? 1 minute, okay, great. So anyways, my thanks to Rich and to Frank for their time and helping me to get ready for this conference and what you're working on as a group. I think that, how many of you know Whole Foods? Oh, that's great, thank you. I will tell you one thing while we're waiting, which is that one of the suppliers I wanted to tell you about was Steve Ela up at Ela Family Farms up in Hotchkiss. How many of you know Ela Family Farms? So they do sell apples all around the state. This is a Swiss, what is it, Red Elk, a Swiss one? This is a Swiss gourmet that he picked out for you. We don't actually even sell this because he doesn't have enough of them. But one of these are in the bag for you. And he just picked them for you yesterday. So I hope that you'll take advantage of it. He's a fourth generation Colorado fruit farmer. So a fantastic apple, really good. All right, how are we doing back there? All right. Well, let's see here. Would you like to see a dance tune or something like that? Actually, Jeff, why don't you stand for a second and say something about Allegro? Can you do that real fast? And just shout it out. They can hear you. Oh, okay, there. We got the slides back now. Love. Say something anyways, Jeff. Come on now. About 120 jobs, and yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, and Rich, and then so we decided to, where's Pueblo? There it is, and there we are right there. We were just telling, can you figure out where we are right there in the center? Okay, you know where that is? So we've been working on that while you've been up here in Westminster. Anyways, I like to, in thinking about coming to speak, I wanted to think about what are you guys really working on, and I went to look at your vision and mission statement, which is always a very good place to start. And I love that part of your statement that talks about vibrancy, that your goal as an organization is to try to promote vibrancy across the state, because I think that's a lot of kind of word symbolizes your new direction as an organization. And I look at the mission, I think that statement needs a little bit of work there. It's a little lengthy, but one part that caught my attention was the realities of economic growth, right? And so I can tell you that as we develop stores ourselves, we've certainly had lots of nightmare stories about trying to put a store together in certain communities. One I'll share with you, out of state, because there's nobody here from Santa Monica, the People's Republic of Santa Monica, California. But we had built a $15 million store in Santa Monica. And the inspectors came, as they do, and they came the day before the store opened, and the sidewalks were off like 1/64 of an inch of tolerance. And they made us, they wouldn't give us they wouldn't let us open. We had to redo the sidewalk, so it took us another 2 days, a substantial cost. And that's someone, I think, that doesn't understand the realities of economic growth, right? And unfortunately, it's not widespread like that. Normally, the things are much more minor, but that sort of situation, for those of you that are elected officials, that's not a good trade-off there in terms of the things. So 3 things I've learned about you, I hope I got it right from talking to the fellows, is that 1, you are very geographically diverse. So you're from all parts of Colorado, rural, urban. There's not one sort of community here. You're representing a vibrant collection of communities. Number 2 is that you're really trying to build a more sustainable future for Colorado through a more welcoming environment for business. And 3rd is that you, through some sort of process over the last couple of years, thought about what you're really focusing on as an organization. And this idea that you're more inclusive of all your stakeholders is, I think, a really positive direction. This idea that you're kind of re-examining how you think about the whole concept of economic development. And Frank said it very well, that essentially you guys realized that you were a bunch of economic developers. You were basically in a phone booth talking to yourself. And, or as Rich said, it was nice to have cocktails and everything, but is there something else that we can all work on as a group? And I think this idea of cutting, pushing your net a little wider, involving the stakeholders, really getting folks included in the process, is a really, really powerful idea that I think would take you a long way down the road. So in a similar way, I think we're economic developers too, because we have a development company, we build stores, and we've been doing it since 1980. This was our first store in Austin, Texas. I'm hoping that the things that I'll share just briefly with you about Whole Foods will be helpful. Our experiences will be helpful as you think about creating your own future in your own communities that you're working in. This is our headquarters today now, 35 years later. So that first store was 10,000 square feet. This store is 80,000 square feet. And we now are in 41 states and 3 countries, and we have 86,000 team members, annual sales of about $15 billion. So that kind of chronicles the journey there of the company, which has certainly been most unexpected for us in the company. We certainly did not expect to be at this place so quickly. And recently we were opening more stores. This is last week we opened 5 stores in 2 days, which is the most we've ever done in the history of the company. And this next year we have another 41 stores. So we're kind of working our way towards a store a week at this point, which is, again, from where we started out, where you saw, it's kind of come a long way. In Colorado, this is our map. This is where we are in Colorado. You can see the green dots, and the 2 newest ones that we opened up that are still to open up are on the right side there. Westminster and Longmont are coming soon, and plus the one in Pueblo, of course, I just mentioned, right? So we still have to put the deal together and all that, but we can work on that. It's interesting, I got a note from the team last night that the store in Basalt that we opened that somebody mentioned, from an economic development perspective, that when we opened, the tax revenues were, the tax revenues essentially went up 30% in the second half of the year after we opened. Now I'm just saying that, that maybe, I don't know, but the fact is I think when you put a thoughtful development together and put it in, I think it does lift, the rising tide does lift more boats. And I think at least that study was done by that community group up, the finance group up there, but the numbers look pretty credible in terms of the tax revenues collected going up after the store opened. So this is what we do. You know what we do then. Most of you know what Whole Foods is about. We're trying to offer a great collection of fresh, healthy foods. And more importantly, maybe you don't know, is our business philosophy. And I hope this is helpful to you. And we call it conscious capitalism. My co-CEO, John Mackey, has written a great book about this. But just in sum, here's what it is, the way that we approach our business on the deepest level. Number one is that we have, at the core of the business is a purpose or a mission. It's the why question. It's why do you exist? You don't exist to make money. You exist to serve a purpose in the world. And at the heart of this effort for Whole Foods is we've got a very deeper purpose about bringing healthier foods to the world. And the question really is, what is your purpose? And both businesses, organizations, and individuals can all have purposes. Number two is conscious leadership, and the sort of thought that no organization can progress any further than the development of their leader. And so if the leader or leaders of the organization are not continuing to develop themselves as leaders, the organization will be stuck. The third idea is around conscious culture, culture being that place where your purpose and your values live with people, and this sort of idea that you have to consciously continue to invest in the culture of an organization in order for it to be able to grow and expand and keep its vitality, even as it gets much larger like ours has. And fourth is this idea of stakeholder integration, that in fact a business succeeds through the success of each of its stakeholders, and that you think about running a business by actually proactively integrating the views and the ideas of all the stakeholders into when you're making decisions and growing your business. It looks something like this for us, that the model is you have the purpose of the business at the very center, and around it arranged all the various stakeholders that participate in the success of the business. And the idea is that these stakeholders really truly do have a stake in the success of the business. And you, I think, have identified that in your thought about elected officials and the various parties that are involved in the development process. So these being our core values, again, core values being stakes in the ground, things you believe, things you use to base your decisions on. And we put those in play through our quality standards. You take your purpose, you take your values, you make them real by putting them into sets of standards. Here's an example of where we take those standards right into the store. Every piece of meat at Whole Foods has been rated steps 1 through 5, and the standards are all up on the website. But again, this idea that a purpose and a values don't really, until you put them and make them real in your organization, and that they're something that you can hold yourself accountable to, they haven't really landed, and they're just sort of talk. But when you actually are living them or trying to live them, and you never get it exactly right every day, they're very impactful. I think we have a number of our team members here. If you talk to them, I think you'll find, or any of the stores, most team members know some of the core values of Whole Foods, and many of them know all of them. And that, to me, is the test around whether these things actually are, the business is trying to operate in that way. And so one of our core values is really around team member happiness and excellence. For Whole Foods, I think, very much a people-driven organization, decided that our customers are the #1 stakeholder, but our team members are right there, and that they're happy because they're the ones that actually serve the customers. And that we have this idea about appreciating team members. At the end of every meeting that we have, we do recognize, you don't have to say anything, but we have this sort of tradition of appreciating one another for things that have happened. And so you end the meeting on sort of a note of gratitude. It's a very powerful thing. But more, we have on our benefits vote, we have every 3 years we have a full company benefits vote, so the team members get to vote on the benefits that affect them. Last year, 92 or 93% of the stock options were issued outside of the company's executive team. So last year, team members realized almost $200 million in real money from their exercising their stock options or their shares. And at this point, something like 34% of team members have an equity interest in the company. I think that's #1 in U.S. companies. So this idea of ownership and happiness is really important. Here in Colorado, of course, just one example of our commitment around our environmental core value. Environment is one of the stakeholders in any sort of process, particularly here in Colorado, where you have such a beautiful state. I would argue it's one of your competitive advantages in getting businesses here. The question is, how are you integrating the environmental stakeholder perspective in your processes to make sure that you're guarding that in the outcome that you produce? And so here's one example where our team this past year participated in this effort with the Nature Conservancy to kind of work on the flow of the Colorado River. Apparently none had flown to the Delta in some time, and so we raised about $100,000. We also created 4 special water bottles to help raise some additional money, and worked on that effort to try to, and apparently last year I wasn't here, but apparently there was some success in that water flowing to the Delta for the first time. So this sort of idea that you're constantly conscious of that point of view. Suppliers, obviously, for Whole Foods, we have literally over 100,000 suppliers in the company. We have over 300 in Colorado alone. And this idea, they are an integral part of our business. Without them doing what they do, we cannot grow our business. We can't offer you the products that we do. And in the last number of years, we've particularly put a focus on the local producers. And we started a local loan program where we lend out at about 5% interest rate. And in Colorado, we've already done 31 loans over $2 million to help young businesses get started and grow. And by the way, our failure rate on those as a company now, because we've lent about $12 million as a company, is less than 3% after some 6 or 7 years. And now in the last year, it's been less than 1%. So these are, these are curated right here in Colorado by the team. Some of the folks are sitting right over here. So the sourcing's done in Colorado. The program is administered in Austin, but it's very much selected here in Colorado. And the one that we wanted to highlight this morning, and some of you may know, is the, Mark, I'm sorry, the name of the family again? Jacober family in Carbondale. I haven't actually met the Jacober family, but Mark has. And so they're doing grass-fed hogs and beef for us. We started them out, and they're now in, I guess, 10 or 11 stores, Mark, right? And Mark was just telling me this morning that when we put their beef in our store, the sales go up like 30% as a result of being able to tell this Colorado story. So there's a poster of them there. It's a pretty cool poster. But this sort of, again, the idea of when you, if the supplier's a stakeholder for us, then we've got to, the core value we have there is win-win relationships between the company and the suppliers. And again, do you always get it right? But that means you pay on time. That means you're constantly back and forth about product ideas. That means you're taking a genuine interest in helping them to grow their business so that you can grow your business. That's sort of an approach. And I think, again, the parallels between what we're trying to do and what you're trying to do as an organization are very good. This is Steve Ela that has the apples, and I asked him to do a little video for you, so hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Here's Steve Ela from Hotchkiss.
Hello to the Economic Development Council of Colorado. My name is Steve Ela. I'm with Ela Family Farms, a small family farm located outside of Hotchkiss, Colorado. Hotchkiss is about 50 miles southeast of Grand Junction. It's a quick background about who we are. My granddad first planted fruit trees in the Palisade area in 1907. So I'm a fourth generation Colorado fruit grower. We have a diversified marketing strategy. We do 8 farmers markets on the Front Range on weekends. We also sell to specialty food stores up and down the Front Range, farm stands, food co-ops, restaurants. But this diversified marketing strategy has given us a tremendous amount of stability, and we've had the best 8 years of since I've been growing full-time, these last 8 years, because of this strategy. Just like my marketing strategy of being diversified, I think sustainable economic development in our communities needs to be diversified. Going after the one big company that has mega jobs and mega money is often a strategy that fails in the long run, because that company is negotiating with people all over the country and in other states and other counties. Whereas I would contend that you would be better to spend your incentives and your money on medium and small sized businesses and businesses that want to be in the community. Just as Whole Foods supports the communities they're in, and they're a major retailer, we support the communities we're in. So I hope you enjoy the fruit, I hope you have great meetings, and I hope you'll consider that economic development over the long term means considering values and companies that want to add value to their communities as well as just contribute payroll and jobs. Have a great day.
So ask a farmer, right? From the mouth of farmers, right? You know, when I saw those apples in the video, it's like, that's what the hail things looked like on that day on TV. It's like, okay, maybe that's what Steve's doing. He's just getting them out of heaven and putting them in the bag, sort of thing, right? Are you guys doing okay? Are you awake? Yes. All right. So Allegro, Jeff already took the stage earlier, but we're obviously really proud of the fact that we have a world-class company right here in Thornton, Colorado. And so we literally have, there's only one person in the company that has more miles than I do flying around, and that's the coffee buyer who flies all over the world. So, but all gets roasted right here in Colorado. Community, I think, you know, our value here is serving and supporting our communities, our local and global communities. And here was a wonderful effort around, is this the Kids Day Out? Slide right up? Yeah. So Heather, just stand up for a second. I want to introduce you to Heather Larrabee, because Heather actually created this program, which went viral, went national. And what she started is an opportunity for kids to do volunteer service in their communities. And it started here in Colorado. It was actually her idea. And in the end, you told me this morning, 1,200 customers and how many team members? 8,700 customers and 1,200 team members participated in this program to donate time in their communities, and then it went across the whole country. So it started right here in Colorado. Pretty cool effort by one of our own. And our Whole Kids Foundation, we also have 3 foundations as a company that essentially Whole Kids does improving child's nutrition, but we do 3 things with the foundation. We do salad bars to public schools, we do gardens in schools, and we do education for teachers. And by the way, the Whole Kids Foundation, the applications are open online. If you have a school in your community and you want a salad bar or a garden, you should apply. It's really a great program. These are examples of gardens from all over the state of Colorado that are already in place as a result of this. And I tell you, you put a kid in a garden, it changes their view about food for their life. It just does. And we're doing them in inner cities, which I'll tell you about later, but these are all, one of these is out by DIA, the old, where they have reclaiming it and putting into a 6,000 square foot garden. There's some here from Fort Collins. These are from all over the state of Colorado where people have applied. And again, this sort of effort here is, I'm saying this only because this idea of putting your core values in action. The core values become real when you live them and when you take action against your values. When you take action against your values, the value becomes real. It becomes complete. And that's the sort of thing that we're striving for. So again, I hope you see the parallels between your journey as an organization and individual organizations and our journey as a company, trying to find our way to a more sustainable future. And it raises for me the questions, these questions, kind of, what does economic development mean anyways? And how is it changing, and how can we think about it differently in order to achieve your goal of a more sustainable Colorado? And how might we offer some ideas about that? I thought I'd start first with a quote from Rich, which is what he said when we were talking, which I think really does get at this idea of how development, I think, has to emerge. It's a much more holistic view of development, much more inclusive view of development, much more collaborative view of development. This is what he said, that it's the collective work of a community. It's all the participants in the community. It's an ecosystem. It's not a singular focus, it's an ecosystem of all the players. And I love this idea of flourishing. I love that word, flourishing. It's not we're just going to get by or we're going to get it done. We're going to flourish. Like, we're going to create an environment where people are really thriving and flourishing. So there's a lot in that. And Rich did give me this thing about he loves the three stools that have the entrepreneurs, the public officials, and the policy support, I think. And we had a stool slide, but it didn't look so good, Rich. I didn't think it would reflect well on you. So anyways, but I think this sort of thinking, and so I thought I would just share with you a few other perspectives that have been influenced to me in my own thinking about this over the years. And in the sort of day, we start with the United Nations, and what you can see from this is how over time, their own view of development has continued to unfold, just as yours is and just as ours is. They started with this idea, you just got to make sure you don't compromise future generations. They're finishing now with this idea that it's they're starting to stretch more into what it potentially can mean. In their most recent Human Development Report, they actually created this quadrant of 6 different quadrants around what the definition of sustainability is and sustainable development is. And I encourage you to go to the website if you want to learn more about that. But if you look at the 6 quadrants, it's much more inclusive, it's much more holistic, it's much broader based in terms of trying to understand what is successful development. For me, and then also I'm a gardener and a farmer all my life, and obviously we sell food, and I was influenced by Sir Albert Howard, who was one of the great agricultural scientists in the 1920s. And this, I think, is his most famous quote about the wheel of life and the connection between the health of the soil and the health of human beings, which often in the last number of years has gotten disconnected for people. They seem to forget that you got to have healthy soil. And obviously Whole Foods tries to work in this respect. But I think it does remind you again that this development activity you're doing is part of a much larger system. And you want to think in terms of systems as opposed to individual parts. And E.F. Schumacher was an economist, a British economist, who wrote a book called Small is Beautiful. When I was growing up, it was really influenced me in terms of this idea that appropriate technology and this idea that you can have beauty with a smaller size or a smaller scale. You don't have to just have something that's huge. And of course, he talked about the broader view of economic development. And Bill McDonough, my friend, is the architect. Some of you may know Bill. He's been designing kind of zero-use buildings all over the world, including in Saudi Arabia, where he's designed these new skyscrapers where one side of the building is all solar panels and the building is a net zero user of energy. He's kind of led that effort in the US. But you see where he's starting to talk about what's the definition of sustainable development is at that last part of his sentence where he talks about it. He talks about it's economic, it's equity, it's ecological, it's elegantly enjoyed in the human experience. And so these ideas that there's lots of people thinking about how to push in this direction. My final one really, I like this so much because it picks up this idea that life will flourish forever. It's not, again, this sort of thing we just try to get it done. It's the sort of thing as we envision something that's much more vibrant, to quote your vision statement, much more vibrant. And how do we create vibrancy? We create vibrancy through inclusion and collaboration, and through taking into account a wider point of view as you do your activities. So we all know that there's many places in the United States that are not flourishing or that are struggling to find their legs in terms of their community. And I would just share a couple of our journeys that in a few underserved communities in the United States that we have done, again, for, I hope, a few more examples that will be helpful and inspiring to you about how some of these things can actually work in practice and what our experiences have been. I take you to the Joe Louis Fist in the city of Detroit, a city, as you know, that has gone from 2 million plus population in 1950 down to under 700,000 right now, on the verge or in bankruptcy, about ready to reemerge. But at that time, a few of us went up to Detroit to try to make a contribution to the city and to try to, as a company, I had been thinking a lot for us about the fact that in Detroit, for example...
It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you very much. I like you too. Where did that come from? Okay, anyways. Detroit, yes, thank you very much. In Detroit, it's actually 11 o'clock, but okay. All right, anyways. The point is, the city of Detroit has 3 times the rate of heart disease and diabetes as New York City. It has youth unemployment and black unemployment close to 50%. It's got real challenges. You know about those. And so we looking for a place where we could make a contribution in terms of the healthier food access. In the city of Detroit is a food desert, or parts of it are food deserts. If you go on the USDA map, there's 6,500 areas where there are no food, where there's limited food access, defined as less than 2 miles access to a supermarket. So for us, we went out and we started in Detroit, and I mean, for me, it was almost a moral question of knowing the value of a healthy diet to a healthy life and to a flourishing future. Almost a moral imperative after having done this for so many years to try to take our company in this direction and make a contribution in certain communities. Detroit is where we started. And what I want to say about this picture, it just starts with meeting people where they are. Serving and supporting our communities is our value. That means you start with not making judgments or assumptions, but you start with meeting people where they are, and you start in dialogue with respect. And you listen and you learn. And that's exactly what we did here, and that's exactly what we did here with the pastors who are strong in Detroit, just having conversations. Even before we decided to go there, we had conversations for a year. I'm happy to say one of our team members, Red Elk Banks, that's now moved to Colorado and is working here in Colorado, was an intimate part of our team in Detroit. Red Elk, could you stand up so people can wave? If you want to talk about Detroit, there's Red Elk right there. As a result of that year, we came up with these principles that we've created called Community First Principles. This idea that the community stakeholder for us in our model, you know our model now, we would put the community first. And we would make our decisions through the lens of what the community would think about it. So when we did our announcement event, for example, we brought all the community groups up with us on the stage to be able to talk about their efforts. When we thought about how we're going to, everything went through the lens of, with the idea that if you put the community first, that you would then in fact get a better result for all of your stakeholders. As opposed to starting out, you got to make a profit or something. We're going to start out with let's start in service of our mission, and let's start really thinking about what the community truly wants. This was groundbreaking day, and it was just fantastic. I thought, for groundbreaking days, normally you have a few people. This was over 200. It was like, well, it was a fantastic day. You can see all the people gathered there. The only thing we forgot to do, Red Elk, you remember this, is it was a very hot day. We forgot to prep the soil, so this shovel didn't really go in. It was like, it didn't really work. Anyways, this was opening day, one of the greatest days of Red Elk in my life, because as a result of this process of being together in conversation for at least a couple of years, this opened in June of 2013. You see the crowds that were gathered. You see the diversity, the racial diversity of the crowds that are gathered. And I think just for a moment, and probably you've had moments like this in your careers, just for a moment, the waves of cynicism, regret, all those things all those forces that are out there every day saying things can't work in places that just for a moment, that was all gone. And for that day, it was just the greatest feeling of hope. and community that I've ever felt in my whole career as a grocer. And it was such a proud moment. And it does show you that if you have an idea and you'll stay with it, even when others will tell you, when we announced this site, the Wall Street Journal wrote a piece, the business plan gone off the rails. And everybody said this will not work. First question at the press conference is, how much money do you have to lose before you leave? Really negative. And yet, on this day, it happened, the store opened, and it continues today, and we have created 180 jobs on a $12 million investment directly in the community. So, and we are really honored and privileged to be part of what that is happening in Detroit, which I guess you heard about yesterday. It's on its way back. It is on its way back as a result of these. And there's a developer called Sue Mosey that you might want to have come next year. She is the best. I said, Kimmy, what shall I tell them about development at the conference, Sue? And she said, tell them you got to do it block by block. You got to do it block by block. So, on to New Orleans, where we did our next store, and this is in Mid-City area of New Orleans, abroad in Bienville. This is an old supermarket that had abandoned, 60,000 square feet. And so we became part of a project, which I want to tell you about. These are the houses right on the same block from Katrina. You can see the watermarks where they marked the water at that time, or they in and out at that time. So you can see it's a bit of a challenged area. This was opening day, which happened in February of this year. That is our, just to show you, we were actually in New Orleans. They had the band come in there for that, which was pretty cool. They get excited about that music down there. I guess it's not very Colorado music, but here's what I want to tell you about this thing in New Orleans, this was called the Project Refresh. This is something I really want you to listen now, because I think this is something you guys ought to try if you're not already trying it here. This was a collaboration of the first order, and let me tell you, the partners who were all on the thing there, we all came together well before the store opened, and we became friends, and we shared values, and we shared purpose, and and we're all physically in the same building together. We are in the same building together. Who put the money up for this? Goldman Sachs, and they are carrying the loan on their balance sheet. So they didn't just sell it, they're carrying it. Ron Mullis, L&M Development, specializes in low income and fixed income housing projects, is the developer. And we have, and their whole staff to watch the process of conversation, how it affected their company and their view of the world and their view of development. It was just fantastic. We have Broad Community Connection, who was the sort of organizer of it all, pulled everybody together. And Liberty's Kitchen, there to the left. Liberty's Kitchen is one of the most incredible stories in the world. What they do is they take at-risk youth off the city of New Orleans, and I'm telling you, the stories are heartbreaking. They teach them culinary skills, and then they help to get them jobs in various fields around New Orleans. They take kids that, I talked to them myself. That was me talking with them on the bottom right there. The stories. I was running the streets till I was 12. My mama died at 9, whatever it is. Nobody was, one that just broke my heart. She said, I grew up without love. I grew up without love. Can you imagine trying to make your way in the world? And this organization, this is the first time some of them said I felt family. Anyways, what we do, this idea of collaboration, we actually we have Liberty's Kitchen make some of our food for our store. And we hire some of the folks that graduate. And they also, by the way, serve food in the public schools in New Orleans. So, but here's the thing I wanted, this idea of the collaboration of everybody all together in the same building physically and sharing the conversation is the sort of model I want to suggest to you that I think has real potential in any of your communities. And it's powerful. And here's a little thing from Jeff Schwartz, who's the ED of the Broad Community.
The goals of Broad Community Connection are to make Broad Street a more vibrant place. To see Broad Street only be a thoroughfare, which is what it is right now, is something that we're certainly dedicated to not seeing endure. We want to see people sitting out on the sidewalk, enjoying their time at a cafe. We want to see restaurants and music clubs and people cycling. We want to see it a more equitable place where people have access to jobs in their neighborhood. Broad Street had really fallen on hard times and really didn't have a clear path forward, and that was something that we were willing to help it chart. Broad Community Connections is a neighborhood development organization, and in that role we fill the gap between traditional development and community, which usually are at odds with one another.
Good, how you doing?
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I just wanted did you hear what he said? The traditional gap between communities and economic developers. Did you hear him say that? And I think that's the way he sees. He's a ground-up community person, but he also saw the need to try to create this new paradigm around how those things could come together. I want you to reflect on that. You know, it's not that this is the only part of the future, but it is one part of the future. And so a very powerful thing to look at the Refresh Project in New Orleans is an example that you might consider for some of your communities. And then on to our research project, which is on the south side of Chicago, the most challenging one we've ever done. This is in Englewood, which is, when we announced this site, the economist came out and said the whole hood, because it's a small, lower income area. And here again, the same process where we started with dialogue. And I have to tell you a story on this. This is Bishop Dukes on my right there. And at one point in the conversation, he said, Walter, he said, we want all the choices that, we want the same choices that other people have, you know. And he looked at it, he leaned over me, he looked, and he goes, lift us up. And I'm thinking, you know, we're grocers, we're grocers. But it becomes more than that, doesn't it? It becomes more about human aspiration and possibility. That's the truest potential of development, when it's done in a way that's inclusive and supportive of human aspiration. I mean, what do you do with a conversation like that? You try harder, you work harder, and you encourage others to do it. And so here we are groundbreaking. You can see the site is a 12-acre site. It's now just starting, they're just starting the groundwork now, but in this and here, you don't think the jobs and the investment in this part of the community are tremendously impactful. So that's a little bit from our journey in those communities, and I think hopefully that's interesting and helpful to you as you think about that aspect of your work. I want to switch now to two other friends of mine that are developers that I think are doing interesting things that I thought would be helpful to you to hear. And let me start with my friend Terry Montesi from Dallas, Texas. So he's going to talk to you about a project now.
Hi, my name is Terry Montesi. I'm the founder and CEO of Trademark Property Company. We're a Fort Worth-based developer of retail and mixed-use properties, and we've been in business for 22 years, since 1992. When we started, we thought of retail places as places that were transactional. They were places basically only of commerce, and our customers were, what we thought about them as were people that paid us rent, and we wanted good credit. And it really just about ended there. But since then, we developed a purpose, and we found that our company's really rallied around that. Our purpose statement is to be extraordinary stewards, enhance communities, and enrich lives. So we now say places used to be places of commerce, then they became places of commerce and community. Now they're places of commerce, community, and meaning, at least the places that we intend to develop. And it involves intentional community engagement. These are more stakeholder-centric places, sort of other-centric places, with the goal of connecting more deeply emotionally with our customers. Our first ground-up branded conscious place is going to be Waterside. It's a 63-acre mixed-use development in Fort Worth, Texas. We've partnered with Whole Foods to anchor the retail in Waterside. And we started by designing Waterside around a beautiful grove of heritage trees that we're told are over 100 years old. And under that, what we're going to find is we're going to invest in that area over $1.75 million in a public space that'll run from the front of the project all the way to the west, where our trailhead will be and where our hike and bike trail is. And that public space really is the heart and soul of our development. And we have a firm belief that this type of development will add value for all stakeholders, including the community, the retailers, the customers, the visitors, and the investors and the developer. And our hope is that all communities will expect more of their developments in the future, and that this will be a model for that.
So my hope is that all communities and all of you will expect more from developers in the future. That's an invitation to you to say, hey, step up your game. You know, step up your game. So one more, my friend Jody that runs Eden's, which is a development company. This is the most progressive thinking I've ever heard from a developer. First of all, she's a woman running a development company, but second of all, when you hear her speak, she does it, it's a pretty short clip, but listen to what she says. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Jody. At Eden's, we have a very strong point of view as to our singular purpose, which is to enrich communities. We're excellent at managing that which we measure. So now, alongside of our measurements of financial and operational successes, we've added the measurement of social accountancy. We can now truly measure our success based on our community's improvement in statistics such as reduction of crime rates, improvement in health and education, and job growth.
So that's Jody. What she said is, first of all, that the purpose of their company is to enrich community. The second thing she said is they are now measuring the success of their projects with reduction in crime rate, reduction in diabetes. They have 4 metrics, and the other 2 I cannot remember right now, but you can look it up. I think it's on their website. But that is some really interesting thinking about how you start to think more broadly about what development is, how you hold it accountable, how you hold it responsible, and more importantly, how you're creating a development that's going to go towards this goal of true more sustainable and people flourishing. So I want to move to kind of finish the talk now so we can do some Q&A if there's time for that, which is to say that I think businesses also are thinking, my friend Paul Pullman from Unilever says that capitalism in this version has reached its sell-by date, and that there's a new view of business emerging, which is that the businesses are more transparent, they're more accountable, they take more responsibility for their role in communities. And Howard here is sharing this idea that it's about much more than money. It's about much more than money. And that I think that is where many companies are beginning to embrace this idea that they do have a broader set of responsibilities in their communities, in your communities. And of course, from Gary Hamel saying this idea that ultimately the 21st century business model is going to be built on people. It's going to be built on the human spirit. Any project that enlivens the human spirit is going to go towards flourishing. Any project or organization that deadens the human spirit is going to go the opposite direction. So you're all running organizations. As you think about your future and how you're going to continue to grow your respective organizations in addition to EDCC, think about this idea of how you're empowering and enriching the human spirit in your activities. That is the key to a lot more innovation, entrepreneurship, and new ideas and innovation. That's the way you can find your way forward. So coming back to the questions, and I guess in conclusion I would say, my own point of view are from our own experiences and journey as a company, as you guys do these considerations over the next couple of days, is really, can you challenge your companies to reimagine their role in your community? Can you challenge them to think differently about what it means to be a participant? Can the community itself, instead of having preconceived notion of what a business is, allow the space for a company to act differently? Can you, public officials, can you create the environment where that sort of conversation can happen? Can all the stakeholders, can you begin to think more imaginatively about how the stakeholders might participate in whatever projects or processes you're developing? Can you imagine different combinations like refresh, where everybody's there at the beginning and help to co-create the development that you're doing, right? And finally, is there a new idea about scale? Could scale actually be in the 21st century, instead of just being one big thing that's huge, particularly for a state like Colorado, which outside the Front Range you have a lot of smaller communities, could the right way to think about scale or growth actually be horizontal rather than vertical? So that you're actually looking at a lot of spinning things in a lot of different places that are doing lots of great things, and together they add up to a more sustainable future. So my thought is, in my own experience, and I think the experience of our team over the last number of years, if you'll give a shot to some of these ideas, if you're not already, I think you'll find your way. I think they work, and I think they'll help you to find your way towards your goals as an organization and a more sustainable future for Colorado. So thank you very much. How do you want to do this, Rich? Oh, okay.
Well, I can start. One of the things you had mentioned when you were talking about your employee base as you grow and the tremendous engagement you have with your employees. I'm curious as to some of the challenges you're seeing in the overall economic and political environment with keeping those programs going.
Well, I think, first of all, you have minimum wage. Just on the financial side, you have some cities like Seattle, which have legislated $15 an hour within 3 years. And so, you know, we've got, we always are, we're well above the minimum wage, we always have been. But I think that's going to affect retailers all over the country. And I think it should go up. I hope it's done in a digestible manner so businesses can make the adjustments. But actually, our turnover, we're having a tremendous luck attracting people. So our turnover is, less than 10% as a company in the supermarket industry, which is about 100%. So we've been very fortunate. We've been best companies to work for 16 years in a row. The challenges, I would say, are two. One is, how do you keep your culture vibrant as you get much larger? So what it worked when you were smaller, but as you get much, much bigger, and we're a big company now, how do you continue to make sure that the culture is living, breathing, and it's still as real? It's not going to be the same, but that's one question, I think. That's one challenge. And I think the second of all is how do you continue to make sure that connectivity is there? So, I mean, our team members are here, and you could talk with them afterwards if you'd like to about their experience of it. But we don't always get it right, and so I guess the other thing would be, how do you continue to see when you feel something that's not right? Do you make the appropriate adjustments? And you got to be constantly vigilant. I mean, I probably walk 65 or 70 stores a year. And I try to talk to a lot of team members so I know what's on their mind. And you can feel it when there's a disturbance in the system, you can feel it. And the question is, will you do something about it? They will tell you if you will listen. And so that would be it, yeah. Yes, sir.
Hi, Neil Marciniak with City of Lakewood, Colorado. First off,
Lakewood.
You've got 3 stores in our community. We appreciate that. My question really focuses around a lot of talk of...
That, by the way, is the biggest sign in the whole company, the Lakewood, isn't it?
At Belmar, probably.
Belmar.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Belmar. Sorry. Okay.
Belmar's in Lakewood. Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
you just set me up, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Yes. So the question is really focused around one of the goals of your company is to uplift the communities around your stores,
right,
through the employees, through some of your different activities. How do you address and how do you maintain that for the community that surrounds when most people in their mind, when they think of Whole Foods, whole paycheck comes to mind. Gentrification of the areas around your stores comes to mind. How do you combat that and make sure that that's not the norm around all of your stores?
I appreciate the honesty of the question. It is because it's something that we're looking at inside of ourselves. How do we, first of all, this is a journey. Just like you're on a journey, we're on a journey. And as a result of our experiences in Detroit and New Orleans, we changed our core value, which was caring about communities and environment, to give community its own core value. And so my encouragement to our team has been to every store team leader, every store, is think more deeply about your relationship with your community. And instead of thinking about it as marketing to the community, think about being in the community. And that was actually my keynote speech at our own internal gathering last year, is that we've only begun to scratch the surface. If we have an intent, if we have a value, if we have a direction that we want to be even better partners in a community, then we can find our way there, because in our structure there's enough empowerment and authority at the store level for them to be able to do that. So I don't know where we are in Belmar Lakewood with respect to our efforts there, but I know with Red Elk here now from Detroit and carrying that spirit with them, that this region is going to continue to work in that direction as far as being part of the community, and that's all we can. That's our intent, and because so that's what I'd say about that. And most companies are in a community, but they take their community for granted to some extent. They just assume it's there, as opposed to stripping that back down and saying, wow, where are we, and starting over with a really building it from sort of ground up. And that's what I'd like to see us do as a company more. We have almost 400 stores, so we're in some 400 communities, but it's a journey. With respect to the second question, again, I really appreciate that. I just let you know, the whole paycheck, by the way, came from a customer who was so excited about the store that they said, I get to spend my whole paycheck there. It's gotten twisted the other direction, but that's where it actually came from, because they were excited about the store. But I think one of the reasons for us to go to Detroit, for me, other than the moral feeling that there's people that we can make a contribution here, is the sort of idea that we as a company, we needed to confront some of these things, the racism, the gentrification, the elitism. I hate the fact that people think of Whole Foods as an elite company. The fact is that natural food, where we started, whole food with a small W, is not elite at all. It's basically the food of different cultures across the globe and over all time. rice and beans and vegetables. These are basic things, right? And somehow that we have, I mean, through our own efforts too, we're at this place where people see us as more elite as opposed to being able to serve more broadly with healthy food, which in fact is what the number one turn on somebody's vitality and flourishing is going to be their diet and their health and their responsibility for that. So I think what's been interesting in Chicago, to your point, is that in Detroit we certainly heard from the black community in particular about the gentrification issue. Like, you're going to come, first of all, they said many other companies have come and then they just leave, or they don't keep their commitments. So a lot of the dialogue was around, how do we know you're going to be real and sincere? I mean, Red Hawk and I sitting in very tough conversations always say, look, talk is cheap. Until we actually do it, why would you believe it? But we're sincere, we want to be here and contribute. So the gentrification that came up there in terms of you come in and then you'll change the community from the thing that we have. On the other hand, a certain amount of change is necessary and appropriate, and we want that. We want the jobs, we want the out. So the trick is, can you become a little more conscious about how you're showing up? Are you going to use the community first principles? Are you going to use this sort of approach in such a way that you're literally building the store up out of that dialogue? I would suggest to you, if you go to our store in Detroit, you will feel that dialogue in that store. You will feel that community. You will see the diversity of the community in that store. You will see that our food stamp redemption there is 7 times the company average. You see that that dialogue has produced something that is not in fact just pure gentrification, but is pure, it is progress or it's growth, but in a way that the community has supported. And what's come up in Chicago right now, this conversation is happening right now, is when we had our dialogue that you saw, the 2 issues that were put on the table were gentrification and also, here's an interesting one, 1/3 of the returning felons, returning citizens from Illinois State Penitentiary that come to Englewood are violent, or they had violent. And our application for jobs says, if you're violent, you know, you check a box, and so they're saying, look, they come back from prison, they need a job, if they're there, they can't go to work, and so can you help us with that? We want to put people back to work because they come home and they can't work, there's no jobs. So these are the difficult issues, and I guess right now we're in this conversation proactively saying, all right, let's talk about gentrification. Let's talk about what's the right balance between progress, or between having this site developed because we need this store and we need these things that are going to come in this 12 acres, and in a way that doesn't destroy the sort of, you know, community that's there, or what's the right balance there. So only way I know to answer that is that we have to dive into those questions. We have to proactively go after those questions and those conversations, and that's right where we are right now. So I don't know necessarily the way that it worked out in Detroit. We'll find our way in Chicago in a different sort of way, but I'm glad that you raised those. Those are real questions, and look, people can make, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm used to people saying that's never going to work, making fun, cracking all the jokes about, that's fine, let you do that. Fact is, we're going to go on. Here's what I know. We put $12 million in the city of Detroit, and we created 180 jobs, and we created 45 new suppliers, and that's real, and the people get it, and they appreciate it. So whoever wants to talk about it, and while all the talk, here was some action. And in the same way in Chicago, the same deal. So I'm really loving these conversations. I'm glad we're confronting these things about ourselves and about the process, and we're learning and we're growing, and that's about the best I can say about it. So, yes, ma'am.
Hi there. Thank you. First of all, I want to start with gratitude. Thank you for coming here, bringing your talented teammates.
Aren't they talented? They're amazing. Yeah.
Yes, and giving us an awesome apple and coffee. So, I'm Jill Farshman. I'm with.
I thought if the talk was crummy, at least you could have the apple and the coffee.
And I had the pleasure of going to the Conscious Capitalism conference earlier this year. And when I read that book, I really felt like, wow, there's my tribe, finally. And I just wanted to make everyone aware here, as I think you are, that we're actually founding a Colorado chapter of Conscious Capitalism here.
Okay.
Kickoff meeting is on Monday. And I would love it if anyone who's interested at all in becoming involved in what is really a phenomenal movement in business, please reach out to me, give me your card, and we will get you integrated into that process.
Thank you. I would suggest Mark Law over here. Mark is one of the VPs, and it would be a great speaker for you if you want to have him come. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kitty Hook with Newmark Grub Night, Frank, and I want to thank you for being here. One question I have is, are you getting involved in the school districts when you're talking about the community and helping them to provide better food?
Yeah, well, the most direct way we have been is through our Whole Kids Foundation, which is now put in over 3,500 salad bars and 2,400 gardens. So, and that application process is open online. If you've got a school in your community, please think about going there. It's simple, it's not bureaucratic, and we can do that. With respect to Colorado school districts specifically, I don't, Heather, do you want to say something about that? Or? Can you hear her? Okay.
Something that is really impressive to me about Colorado is we're at the forefront of the school garden movement, and we have leaders here who've been brought to the White House, specifically Andy Nowak, if you know him. So Slow Food Denver, this chapter here in town, has created over 100 school gardens, and we work closely with that group through the Whole Kids Foundation to have annual meetings where schools can come and learn how to apply for those. But then he's also worked on curriculum to take the food that's grown in the school gardens into the cafeteria, and they're paying school districts for that food just the way they would a farm or another local producer. So the kids are growing that food, eating it in their cafeterias, making money, having school-based farmers markets. And that curriculum has been taken out nationally, and it's held up as a best practice, and that's developed here in Colorado. So there's a really rich relationship between Whole Foods, Denver Public Schools, Jefferson County Schools, etc. So
yeah, I turned on the TV last night when I got here. There was a big the Jeffco. Did you see that on? What? That was like hey man, you guys go at each other here in Colorado. Man. It's like with the history AP test, I'm like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Yeah, exactly right. Okay, is that good? One more here? Yes.
Good morning. Thank you for coming out here again to Colorado. My name is Steve Art with the City of Wheat Ridge. And while you don't have a store in Wheat Ridge, we have a perfect site for you, and we'll give you a bigger sign than Lakewood. No. We appreciate that you do shop locally. In Wheat Ridge, we have a greenhouse that grows all of your tomatoes for all of your front range markets here, Circle Fresh Farms. Yesterday, we heard from a speaker that talked about a new line on the internet. You can go on the internet and you can tell them, I'm going to make a lasagna on Monday night, and they'll send you all the exact ingredients with the exact amount of ingredients that you need to make that. What do you see as a change in retail shopping in the future? How do you prepare yourself and your company for the second decade of this century?
Yeah, you sure you don't work on Wall Street? Or, all right. Look, here's my view. That is that I think I've never seen in all my years of such a profound changes in retail, and the future looks like this. Number one, it looks like it's completely integrated with technology now, particularly in the urban areas where through the options that customers now have through their devices, that you're seeing retailers having to, technology is no longer IT, it's no longer over there. It has to be at the main table, thought about as the evolution of the company in terms of giving customers choices. Number two, it's expanded beyond the four walls, so it's the digital world out there. So as it's called, as some people are calling it the phygital world. The successful retailers will be those who integrate, who extend themselves into the digital world, and successfully integrate for their customers choices in the digital world, the physical world, and the place between. Even Amazon, as big as they are, having to acknowledge that their limitations are no place where you can connect with them physically, right? So they're looking to do some things along those lines. For us, putting ourselves into the digital world so you could shop online, or you could shop for the sort of thing you go online, get a recipe, and actually the idea ultimately would be you come to the store, it would actually walk you through the store and tell you where you could pick up the ingredients. That sort of an integrated experience is what's going to win in the future for retail. So that's where we're trying to head. We've lined out our digital roadmap, but I think for all retailers, it's this integration of technology. It's the recognition that customers are now at the very center of everything. They are in charge. They've got the choices, they've got the technology that empowers them. It's this idea of the fusion of the physical and the digital, and that's where and I think ultimately it's going to be a more personalized, customized future. So the brands are going to have to get to know their customers and be able to serve them in a very personal, customized way. Those are kind of the broad themes of the future of retail. You know, retailers have a lot of money deployed in physical assets, and the return on capital will be a challenge for them if they don't start to think and move beyond the four walls. They'll have a hard time with returns, will start to drop, and it'll put pressure on them. So I think it's this sort of thinking about how you move in that direction that will allow people to succeed. That's certainly what we're going to try to do. We're good, Frank?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Big round of applause for that today.